This just in what could only be described. What's going on, guys? It is Jamil with MILMID Studios. Thank you so much for tuning in to another video. Today, I'm joined by my beautiful wife, Emily. She's gonna help me demonstrate exactly how I do discreet street photography with my big old Canon R3. I said camera R3.
Big old camera.
So there's a few things, guys, okay, and we're gonna go over it. I'm gonna strap on the GoPro to Emily, and she's gonna be my subject, and I'm gonna be showing you exactly, what I do with my camera, how I hold it, where I'm looking, all that stuff. Because, don't be mistaken, people will see you coming from a mile away with this camera. And me, I'm like, I kind of stick out of a crowd. I have this mustache, and people, when I'm walking in a room or walking somewhere, people notice me, and it's not a good thing. So when you try to do like discreet street photography.
And handsome.
I mean, what can I say? Let's try. But when you try to do discreet street photography, with a GoPro strapped to your chest, the big camera, Canon R3, and then an 85-1.2 on the end, or even a telephoto or something, you really do stick out. So I want to go over kind of what my steps are. Anything?
Nay.
Oh, yes. Emily has this Canon R5. It has a contour black skin. Check out alphagard.com, and I want to shout out Mike and AlphaGuard for hooking this up. Absolutely beautiful skin, and it helps protect the beautiful, expensive body of your camera. So let's get into the video. Okay, guys, so we have 5 steps. The first one is going to be exposure, okay? Very important that you get your exposure right when you go out. Whether you shoot AV or you're shooting manual, you want to make sure that the shutter speed, the aperture, and the ISO are all dialed in to make sure that you have the best light for your pictures. Because we're not talking about, shooting from the eye or using the screen at the back here. We're talking about hip firing, these discrete shots with the Canon R3. The very important tips when doing discrete photography with your camera, namely the R5 here, is that you want to have the aperture to about f8. You want a higher aperture, because if you are using like a wide lens, like I was using the 15 to 35, you want to be able to capture all that context. You want to make sure that everything's kind of in focus. And we'll get into, using the 85-1.2 and how to get those pictures in focus as well. But essentially at f8, you're getting everything in focus. The shutter speed, you're gonna wanna make sure that it's fast enough that it freezes time, because you're walking up to people, the camera, you're holding it at your hip, there's gonna be some bounce, there's gonna be some shake, so you wanna make sure that you can freeze the frame, and that, if you're at f100, that may be too slow if someone's coming towards you, if someone's moving away from you. So I like to go at about 1/400 or 1/500th of a second. ISO, you can adjust as required for your lighting situation. When I'm doing street photography and I'm doing discreet street photography, where it's not like a really controlled setting where I'm asking someone to pose or I'm doing stranger portraits, I like to have my aperture at about f8, okay? Just a higher aperture. So we're just gonna say f8 to be safe. So another thing, guys, is that you want your shutter speed high enough so that when you're walking by your subject, when you're walking, your camera might be bouncing, you want to be able to freeze time and freeze that frame so there's no blur. So today, with the light setting that I have right now, I'm set at 1/400th of a second, f8, ISO is kind of bouncing around 250 to 400. The second thing, guys, is that you want to activate your silent shutter. We're talking about the R3 here, so that has the capability of activating and deactivating the shutter sound. So I would recommend that you do a shortcut on your camera on the front fascia of the R3. I have one of those buttons to be my activation of the silent shutter. This is just another layer of discreet shooting. It's not the end all be all. I mean, if you have a camera with a mechanical shutter only, or your electronic shutter can't be silenced, it's not the end all be all, because, in a downtown area or even here in a park, there's ambient noise and it may drown out the shutter. But for the R3, I think best practice is to make the shutter silent. When the shutter is activated fully, it does make a sound. And there may be some ambient noise like this water over here where it kind of drowns out the sound of the shutter, but I like, just to be safe, if I am doing discrete photography, to actually silence the shutter completely. So I'm gonna activate that silent shutter. I did a short showing exactly how I silence the shutter. There are these 4 buttons on the front here, and they are customizable, along with many other buttons on the R3, but I use this button at the top here to silence my shutter. The third step is gonna be how you hold the camera. Now, thankfully for the R3, you have the redundant controls, which is very helpful. It allows you to really maneuver the camera in a way that's comfortable to you and that looks natural if you're holding it with one hand. And you're kind of looking around, you're looking curious. and your subject's not really going to know exactly what you're doing. But by the time you've passed them, you've probably already taken like 20 or 30 pictures. That might be a little over exaggeration, but the redundant controls allow you to hold your camera either horizontally or vertically in a way that seems natural and that doesn't draw attention to you. So you're not really putting the camera up to someone's face to take a picture of them. So one good thing about the Canon R3 is that there are redundant controls. So when you are shooting vertical, you go like that. And the shutter button is magically right over here, conveniently placed for your index finger. If you're shooting horizontal, the shutter button is right over here. So it's pretty much a cheat for the R3. And I guess if you have the extended battery kit for the R5 or the R6, you get that capability as well. But in this case, how I like to hold the camera for vertical, I just hold it in one hand if I'm trying to be really discreet with the R3, because it's not like you have the Leica Q3 or the Q2 or like the Fuji X100V, pretty compact cameras where you can kind of just hold it here and like quickly take pictures, bow, 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 bow. No, we have the Canon R3, and sometimes we have a telephoto or the 85 f1.2, a big old camera, big old lens, and people see you coming. So what I like to do is I like to hold the camera. If I'm taking a vertical shot, I have my thumb on the shutter, okay? If I'm going for a horizontal picture, I'm gonna have and it depends on obviously the size of your hands, but I'm gonna have my middle finger on the shutter down here. So again, vertical, just naturally my thumb goes right here and I'm good. Just like that. Horizontal, middle finger right here. You want to half press the shutter as you're approaching your subject. It keeps them in focus, and as long as you're in servo focus mode, then whether they're coming towards you or they're going farther or going away from you, you have them in focus. So really important to half press the shutter, because that allows the R3's autofocus to really lock in on your subject, and then you can just hold it down and take multiple exposures as you're passing the subject. You want to be aware of your general demeanor. So just say Emily is right here. I don't want to literally walk up to her and kind of like, that's like way too obvious and can make your subject very uncomfortable. I like to essentially, yeah, you can stand right there, babe. Just say I'm going vertical, so I have my thumb on the shutter release. I like to kind of walk and I'm looking around. I know where she is, and I've already taken like 4 pictures, and I'm not even looking at her. So this time I'm gonna go the horizontal. And there you go. All right, guys, so I want to show you what happens when you're walking by your subject and your shutter speed is too slow. So just say I'm at 1/100th of a second, and I'm going to be trying a vertical picture here. We're exposed. So Emily's going to be walking towards me. As you can see with that picture, guys, is that it's completely out of focus. It's because the shutter speed is too slow. You have her walking towards me and me walking towards her. So we want to make sure that that shutter speed is high so that you actually freeze time and you freeze the frame. So we're going to do the same thing. Go back over there, babe. We're going to go with, let's say 1/500th of a second. We're going to compensate the ISO to make sure we're nice and exposed. Half press the shutter. Big difference. And it actually brings up another point, one last point that I'll share with you guys. So I attribute my ability to do this technique and hip fire with the Canon R3 and the 85 f1.2. I'll put that on here in a second. Because this thing has amazing autofocus and face detect and eye detect autofocus. So while I'm walking towards my subject, I'm actually half pressing the shutter while I'm targeted on them, and that makes sure that they're being tracked as you walk towards them. When you are walking up towards your target, if they are stationary right there, you want to half press. Oh, that was actually pretty nice. You want to half press so that the autofocus is actually locked in on your target. So to demonstrate that, guys, I'll just have Emily standing there stationary. I see her from a distance. We are a little underexposed here. 1/400. That's actually nice. Okay, so we're at f1.2, 1/400th of a second, 640 ISO. Okay, so I see my subject. Looks good. in the distance. I have my, I'm pretty discreet right now. I am half pressing the shutter and I've engaged the shutter completely. I'm taking multiple shots and I'm good. Pretending that I'm watching. Hey, how you doing, ma'am? She doesn't know that I got some great candid shots of her. Amazing. Now, just to demonstrate this technique, guys, with the f1.2 servo, I'm gonna be at 1/500th of a second. We are exposed there. I'm half pressing the shutter right now, so right now it has focused on her. I've taken a few exposures. Very nice. And some of these you can recompose them in post. As you can see, I'm a little bit high, but you can straighten them and you can re-crop them. But essentially you got the shot and it's nice and it's discreet. So that's good. Perfect.